All of us have a choice to make that are in winter's path now. If we don't know for sure, we have robust natural immunity from a prior and recovered COVID infection, at least within this calendar year, if not the last 6 or 9 months, then the rest of us have a choice to make. And this choice comes down to not just you listening, but everyone in your household. The choice is you sign up for the Spirit of the Age treadmill, because that's what you're going to be on. You are now part of an ongoing experiment in mRNA injection and reinjection. Who knows, man? It might turn out great. I don't know. A year or two from now, we might be looking at this technology and maybe they've figured something out with round 2 or version 3.0 that they haven't figured out yet, trying to rush these products to market. We can't sit here and say a year or two from now that we won't be sitting here and singing Salkian-like praises for this. Can we say that for sure?
Not for sure.
Not for sure. I would not bet on that, by the way, but I can't tell you that for sure. Here's what I can tell you for sure. You won't be getting this shot just once, not if you actually want it to work. You won't be getting it just once. There will not be just one round. You will be getting injected and re-injected. CDC hinted last week that they will be pulling in Israel on you shortly. That soon, if you don't have a third booster, you will not be under CDC guidelines considered fully vaccinated. Moderna announced during our show just a little while ago that it foresees its shot being necessary on an annual basis. Keep in mind, this is unlike any vaccine technology we have ever used. We have already seen a higher volume of side effects than for any previous vaccine in the history of the adverse side effects database. Now, as I've pointed out, a part of that is simply just because of the sheer volume of these that we're injecting. I mean, we've never injected this much of a vaccine into people before this fast. Never. In human history. About 6 billion doses of these various COVID therapeutics have been injected globally. About 6 billion. But here's the issue. Even if the rates of adverse side effects are low, and they are, they multiply with every new round of re-injection because we're doing the time warp again. So you multiply it times 2, times 3, times 4. One of the accounts, anonymous accounts, that's proven to be one of the better follows during COVID stand. Gummy Bear, you guys know who that is, right? You've seen that?
Of course.
Have you seen he has an article out. Mostly peaceful myocarditis. That's what it's called. Talking about injecting children. Mostly peaceful myocarditis. How great. I told him that's a freaking great headline when he sent it to me. Wished I had thought of it. All right. Mostly peaceful myocarditis. So we talked early treatment last hour. Gave you a lot of good options there because that's your other option. Your other option is early treatments. Have access to them, know where you can go to get them, and maybe already go ahead and have them in your home, just in case. Some of you, though, will choose the vaccination route, or already have, or you're contemplating it. I want to walk you through the data that's probably not being shown you, that's not being shared with you most other places, including in a lot of other alternative media outlets. Okay? Let us begin here. I want to walk you through a thread. And this is data that's just released from the CDC on Friday. Don't shoot the messenger. This was just released data from CDC on Friday, where all the best news gets dumped on a Friday, right?
Of course.
What I'm going to show you is that last week in America, 40%, or the last week we kept the stats, so that would be the week ending the week before, because we don't have this last week's stats yet, so the week prior. In the most recent week of stats from CDC, 40% of the people who died with COVID in America, 40% were vaccinated. I'm going to show this to you. Okay. Here is the cumulative, if you're watching on BlazeTV or later today on Rumble. If you're not on, if you're just listening to the podcast, you don't get to see this, okay? But up on our screen right now, I have for you the screen capture of the cumulative breakthrough death report from CDC last week. And as you can see on that very top line, total number of breakthrough deaths in America, meaning they call a breakthrough when somebody who's vaccinated has been infected or died, that the infection broke through the vaccine. Total number of breakthrough deaths, 7,178. Now, I'm here to tell you right now, it's higher than that. Looking at the stats that I've looked at state dashboards, but we're just going to go with their numbers. Because their own numbers are going to make my point for me. I don't have to embellish or estimate one way or the other. So on October 12th, CDC reported there had been a grand total, so from the start of January until now, of just 7,171 breakthrough deaths with COVID. Next, there's the report they put out on Friday. The report, as you see, that they put out on Friday, October the 18th, for which a place I used to write for, USA Today, wrote a glowing piece about what a great miracle these COVID vaccines are, using the exact same scam of cumulative data, pre-Delta data, no trend data, totally out of context data. So it's a complete fallacy, and I mean that to be a lie data. Here's the trend line. On October 18th, CDC reported that there were now 10,857 deaths with COVID vaccination in America. That is an increase, folks, of 51.2% in 1 week. In 1 week, the number went up 51.2%. Some of you will say, well, Steve, they take longer to find out and code the vaccinated deaths. So, and why? They don't take weeks and months in most cases to tag and bag someone that died with COVID unvaccinated. We find out about that like 3 seconds, don't we? Yeah. So, I mean, I don't, if indeed this is true that it jumped this high because it took them weeks and months to truly investigate whether that person was vaccinated or not, why is there, then the follow-up question to that is, why is there one set of data credentialing and verifying for the vaccinated that does not exist for the unvaccinated, and largely didn't exist last year when there weren't any vaccines? So that is not an excuse. In fact, that actually further indicates fudging the numbers and manipulating them. And by the way, they don't even claim that. So I'm not giving them that excuse. I've just heard some people proffer that to me on Twitter. So that's maybe, you might even be right, but I'm not granting them that. That's a 51.2% increase in just 1 week. Moving on. If you go to Worldometer's day or Worldometer's page for the United States, I've always said, hey, if you want to get weekly stats and benchmark them by where things were at the time a year ago, go to the World Health Organization dashboard, right? But if you want to see where things are going day to day, go to Worldometer. They update things daily for you. So I did. I went over to Worldometer's page for the United States. And if you go down to their death graphic there, I added it up. From October 13th to October 18th, 9,060 people died with COVID in America during this reporting period from CDC. 9,060 people died. According to the CDC data I just showed you, therefore, 3,679 of them were vaccinated. Meaning, if you take the amount that the total cumulative deaths of vaccinated COVID patients increased in 1 week, and you divided it by the total number of COVID deaths that week, guess what you get? 40% of all COVID deaths in the United States last week vaccinated. 3,679 1-week increase in vaccinated COVID deaths divided by 9,060 total COVID deaths that same week is a 40% increase. Is 40% of all COVID deaths in the U.S. last week were vaccinated. 40%. To repeat, A 51.2% increase in fully vaccinated COVID deaths in just the last week. And CDC is now reporting 40% of all COVID deaths in America last week were vaccinated. These are their numbers. So Mara Eliason over at NPR and anyone else out there trying to manipulate the updates I've been given on this constantly, or maybe you're just peddling weak-ass fake news. Maybe you're too dumb to understand what the term trend line or last week means. But these are the government's numbers. These are the government's numbers. Now, keep this in mind. As Daniel points out, they game this out to make the vaccines look the best they can. For example, partially vaccinated people count as unvaccinated. You're not counted as fully vaccinated until you have until you're 14 days outside of the decisive shot. Oh, by the way, when are most of the side effects in the adverse side effects database reported? Within the first 14 days after injection. And now, though, they don't want to count you as being fully vaccinated until you're outside of those 14 days. I'm sure that's just a coincidence, fellas, right? I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
Trust the experts.
Yeah, indeed. Okay. But here's what that means. It means that the data I just presented to you is the most favorable framing possible. What they're releasing is the most favorable framing possible. The most favorable number we can come up with is that 40% of the people who died with COVID last week were vaccinated. That's the most favorable number, most favorable one. Because we're not counting single dose vaccinations or people that aren't 14 days. That's why I was asking when we started denying transplants, organ transplants now, to people who aren't fully vaccinated, like Cleveland Clinic wants to do. Okay, so I got to get a heart transplant. I finally agree. Fine. Dude, COVID vaccines might be complete and total canal water, but I got to get a new heart, right? Give me the COVID vaccine. However, if I'm not considered vaccinated till 14 days after, do I have to hope that I don't die on a slab waiting for a heart transplant for 2 weeks? Or am I instantly counted as vaccinated so I can get a heart transplant? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
See, they don't answer these kinds of questions because they're not doing data. They're doing framing and narrative. So the numbers I just showed you are the most favorable framing possible. Now, lest you think any of this is made up whatsoever, here's the former director of the CDC, who is now the senior advisor to Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland, every Democrat's favorite Republican governor. Here's what he said on Fox News last week.
I hear a lot of times people feel it's a rare event that fully vaccinated people may die. I happen to be the senior advisor to Governor Hogan in the state of Maryland. In the last 6 to 8 weeks, more than 40% of the people that died in Maryland were fully vaccinated.
See, I've been tracking this trend for about 4 to 6 weeks. It was mid-September when I started looking at all these states' dashboards for these numbers. That's why I'm telling you, it's not just that it suddenly became 40%. The number's higher than that. Because I've been tracking these data trends in states like Maryland, where Dr. Redfield works now. And what is he saying? It's been 40% or higher for a couple of months. Let's go to the true efficacy, or let's go to this tweet next. I want to reiterate, the goalposts constantly move because the goal here is to make the vaccines look good, not to find out how truly good they are. They might actually be pretty good. They're just not like, intergalactic, but that doesn't pretty good doesn't raise anybody's share price. Intergalactic does. So they're going to lie. They're going to frame these things as best they can, like they are, as you put it, Todd, magical elixirs. Here's Dr. Robert Malone, who's been on our show. only the first guy to actually patent mRNA technology. So what does he know about it?
He's a chump.
Clearly nothing. And he's pointing out they're about to change the definition of fully vaccinated on you. Again, you sign up for this, it's welcome to the Hotel California. You can check in anytime you like, brother, but you can never leave. So if you think just getting this will get me into this event, will get me my job, get my kid in school, and I can just move on and give in this one time, oh no, you won't. The bully will be back for your lunch money again, soon and proper. So what is the true efficacy of these vaccines? Look at this from Justin Hart, one of the OGs. He's one of the founders of Rational Ground. Great website. It was just on our show a couple of weeks back. Look what he tweeted out. How do you calculate the efficacy of a vaccine against a disease where half of the people already have it? Someone at CDC pointed out to Justin that nearly 60% of vaccinated people self-reported they had already had COVID. 60%! A supermajority. Here's what that means. You're watching a baseball game. Previous pitcher went 8 innings. Struck out 12. But he's out of gas, right? All right. So when the guy's walking, off the mound, they always show his stat line, right? Okay. Guy comes in from the bullpen. Hasn't thrown a pitch yet. All of a sudden they show he struck out 12 batters in the game so far. And you're watching thinking, he hasn't thrown a pitch yet. How do you strike anybody out? They just took the strikeouts of the guy that already did all the heavy lifting and attributed him to the guy coming out of the bullpen. That's what that is. So the natural immunity that provided all the efficacy, we just give credit to the vaccines. You know what that means? We don't have any way of knowing that. Yeah. We have no way of knowing what the efficacy of these vaccines are.
What is the vaccine anyway?
We don't even know. Because all along they've wanted to deny us a control group. That's why they had to lie about Sweden last year during lockdowns. That's why they're trying to get everybody vaccinated right now, so there's no control group, so that we never know the true efficacy of these things. That's the goal here, to never know what the true efficacy is. On top of the meta goal, which is for you to not be a free person, to no longer have bodily autonomy. And your case for bodily autonomy rises and falls on what's the true efficacy of the vaccines. So if a supermajority of the people getting them already had some form of immunity to COVID, we have no way of knowing what the actual efficacy of these vaccines are. We don't know. We don't know. Let's go to the UK, where they're now giving us the best data in the world, and screenshot as much of it as you can, folks, because like Israel, I don't know they'll be giving it to us much longer. It was just a few months ago, I told you Israel gave us the best data. We don't get squat out of Israel anymore. UK update. 70% of the people dying with COVID in England, double vaccinated. Keep in mind, almost 80% of those over 12 in the UK are vaccinated. Almost 80% of those over 12. And oh, by the way, the UK had virtually the exact same number of deaths the second week of October of 2020 as it did the second week of October 2021. How's that possible? 66 million people live in this country. And the same time period, in a sample size of that size, produced the same amount of COVID deaths the year where there were no vaccines as the year when there were. The difference is like 7. I think it's like 841 to 833. That's crazy. That's not statistically possible. Unless the vaccines aren't good. Then it is. Let's get more on the UK. This is the second week in a row. Official UK government data shows that the vaccinated are more COVID infected in every age group in that country, except those under the age of 30, who are the least vulnerable to COVID. Now, some of you are going to say, and maybe have heard, well, of course we're going to have that because a lot more people are vaccinated. Because that's the goal of a vaccine. That's the goal of the vaccine, to see more infections. That's the goal of the vaccine. Everybody gets vaccinated to see more infections. No. See what that UK data, Aaron, can you put it back up there for just a second? What that UK data does, if you look at it closely, zoom in on that bottom box there if you can, Aaron. If that's even possible. Maybe we can't. Okay. See, what's the first word in the last two columns? What's the first word? Rates. Rates. See, they kindly actually broke it down per capita for us. That's not the whole raw number. They broke it down per capita. This is rate per 100,000 citizens. They already broke it down. So you can go ahead and take that fallacy and stick it where the sun don't shine. That dog wasn't hunting anyway, but it definitely it's as dead as a dog in one of Anthony Fauci's experiments now. It's that dead. They already broke it down for you per capita. Rates per 100,000 people. More COVID infected in every age group in the UK, except those under 30 who were doing just fine with COVID before we had any vaccines. So this is the information you should know to make the most informed choice that you can. Because we all do face a choice. If you have not had, at least within this calendar year, if not even more recent, a recovered COVID infection that gives you natural immunity, and winter is coming, the choice you have now is to sign up to be a part of an ongoing human trial experiment with experimental tech that who knows when, if ever, it will end, and you will be injected and re-injected repeatedly. Or know your outlets and resources for early treatment that we talked about last hour. That's the choice we now all face.